Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, the 11th of August. It is midwinter in New Zealand and it is freezing. But most importantly, this is the NZ Travel Show. Laura, what's the NZ Travel Show?
Well, the NZ Travel Show is the place where you guys can come and ask your New Zealand travel questions directly to the experts, the people behind nzpocketguide.com, which is New Zealand's largest travel guide and completely free online for you guys to check out.
Indeed.
So why don't you go check that out? But if you're not into reading, this is why we do the NZ Travel Show. You guys can just come straight onto the chat, ask your New Zealand travel questions, and we go through all those questions throughout the show. And and also we usually have a theme that we also follow to talk about in between those questions.
Indeed. So questions in the live chat, in the comments below. Let's help you plan your trip to New Zealand. But in the meantime, let's talk about, well, something a bit more generic today. The thing that we wish we knew before we came to travel in New Zealand. So admittedly, this has been a long time. I've been in New Zealand for over 15 years. Laura's been in New Zealand since over a decade. But here's a bit of a catch-all of all the stuff we wish we knew before coming to New Zealand. So without further ado, let's move on to our little podcast segment. We are going to be watching ourselves doing a clear kayaking in Goat Island Marine Reserve near
nice.
Auckland. So if you want to just listen to us, you can just listen to us. Or if you want to spend an hour on the water with us, you're more than welcome to kind of start looking at your screen. It's kind of like podcast or you watch, it's kind of up to you. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with what we wish we knew before traveling to New Zealand. Do you want to get started or do you want me to go first? Who's going first?
I can get started,
All right, let's
I guess. Just a thing to sort of note that a lot of my things are more pertaining to, I guess, the working holiday side of basically coming to New Zealand to live and work and travel. Not just travel, not just live, not just work. So
I have to say, all of mine have to do with travel. So I think we're not gonna have too much crossovers.
Okay, then yeah. So because my first one, basically they're not in any particular order. I did write a quick list, but they were pretty much the first ones that just came to my head. So starting with the first one, which is going to be quite random, as is most on this list, is that you cannot return electronics in New Zealand just because you
Wow.
feel like it.
Okay, so shopping basically.
Yes, pretty much. I thought this is kind of like obviously a lot of things in New Zealand. There's not much to complain about, but these are the nitpicking things, right? So, yeah, I bought a phone because, you know, sometimes you need a new phone. When I came in New Zealand as a working holiday maker, and I needed, you know, a phone that I could connect to the local network, blah, blah, blah. But I chose a phone that I realized once I bought it, I was like, actually, I found a better one somewhere else. So I went to go return it at the warehouse. And they were like, oh, you can't just return this. Is there something wrong with it? No? Well then, you're stuck with it. And I was like, what? Since when?
Yeah, so change of mind is not really kind of something you can do. It's not really kind of ingrained in the society of like customer service or anything like that. It's kind of like once you buy something, you keep it. Consumer laws are relatively kind of limited. I agree with that. So yeah, no, that's a fair one. I don't know how many travelers will buy electronic and try to return it at the same time, but that is important for working holiday makers as you kind of build a little bit of a life for a year or two in New Zealand.
Exactly, yeah.
That makes sense. So all of my kind of like I wish I knew, I actually kind of went online and then validated it with some like some sort of sources. So from time to time I will tell you other places where I find a similar complaint just to kind of validate that it's not just me being a complainy French dude. So with the first one I have, the thing I wish I knew was very much doing a little bit more research about what it costs to do activities in New Zealand. The cost of activities in the country is actually quite high. We're talking at about $500 to do bungee. We're talking like, you know, close to $800 to do some of the skydives and those kind of things. So it is getting really, really expensive in the country. And even back in the days when I arrived in New Zealand, I did not do enough research as to knowing, like, yeah, I knew all the things I wanted to do, but I kind of didn't research exactly how much they would all cost me, or even just inputted the fact that, yeah, I saw it on discount once, I probably will never find it on discount again when I need, etc. So that's kind of one of the things that I kind of noticed, like, you know, the attractions, the experiences, like doing the budget and researching. And so I have found people on a couple of Reddit threads as well as on the Lonely Planet forum, people which have said they complained about that as well. So I'm not alone in that. And I'm not just a cheapskate. It is something which is well known in the country. It is quite expensive. So yeah, that's the first thing that I wish I knew before coming to New Zealand. So you are at 2. We're saying hi to Denise and Geraldine from Belgium, and
Good
to
morning.
Adil Mula. This is Kia ora, Robin, Laura, and all the viewers. Feel free to pitch in with your questions, ladies and gentlemen, while we continue talking about the things we wish we knew before coming to New Zealand. What is next on your list, Laura?
Next on my list also relates to cost. So if you thought you were a cheapskate, then wait until I just talk about the cost of food in New Zealand. So, in particular on my list, I did write down the words, the price of cheese and meat in particular were the two things that really took me by surprise when I first arrived in New Zealand. I think it's kind of been the same since I first arrived 10 years ago to now. A kg of cheese costs around $10, and I don't know, I just kind of felt like, whoa, that's like, there goes my shopping budget all on cheese. Okay, I had more of a shopping budget than $10, but you know, that's a substantial amount of a shopping budget. So and also what confused me more was the fact that it was, you know, it's cheese that's produced in New Zealand, like it's all like locally made food.
Yeah, what I find a lot is, and the joke, so I was originally from France, so I still have a couple of contacts in France, and it's often the case that New Zealand lamb is cheaper in French supermarket than they are in New Zealand supermarket.
Yes.
And it's kind of, it makes a little sense. I mean, some globalization and economic experts may be able to explain that, of course, but it makes little sense, obviously, when you see that, right in front of your eyes. I agree with that.
Yeah, so that really took me by surprise the first time I went into a supermarket, and I was like, Woo, it's like, you know, these were kind of like staples of, I guess, my home life back in the UK was your cheese and then maybe, you know, getting a couple of chicken breasts for cooking with type thing. But then very soon into being in New Zealand, I was like, okay, I'm pretty much going to either reduce my cheese consumption and I completely cut meat out of my diet, which was great for my budget. Also, it turns out that later I realized that I cared about the planet more than I did when I first arrived in New Zealand. So then I was like, oh good, cutting out meat is also good for the planet as well. So I think I turned it into a positive, but initially when I first arrived, I was like, I basically just sort of changed my diet according to what I could spend as a young budgeting backpacker.
So there's a couple of you guys from Europe. We just have El van der Wal coming from the the Netherlands. So we in New Zealand. That says good morning. We also have Denise and Geraldine. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit if you know of any New Zealand products and what would be their price? I'd love to actually next time we go shopping compare that.
Yeah, I know that like in the UK you can get a lot of New Zealand wine. I'm not sure if it's cheaper in the UK compared to New Zealand.
I don't know about those kind of luxury products. I'm thinking more about the staples like meat and stuff like that. But
there's also the cheap varieties of wine which do make their way to the UK as well.
Okay. All right, so I'm actually going to piggyback on yours because I bet it is a bit more expensive than expected to do shopping in supermarkets. It is still cheaper to actually shop and cook for yourself because my oh my, eating out in New Zealand costs a damn lot. So dining out in New Zealand can be extremely expensive, especially around the tourist hotspots, right? Like you go to a restaurant in Queenstown, you're gonna pay through your nose, right? And so a lot of travelers have told us, and we used to run like the website that we run right now used to be called like something else, and so we used to kind of run Facebook groups and etc. And some of the main kind of complaints on there were like, okay, I wish I had planned accommodation where I can cook for myself, such as hostels or holiday park and all that, because overall that would have saved me so much rather than eating out. At the moment, even if you want to get like a meal in a fast food chain like McDonald's or anything like that, $20 will be kind of your base for like something relatively small that probably wouldn't fill you. So if fast food, which is supposed to be cheap and cheery, is about $20 already, you can tell that is quite expensive. It's not rare in New Zealand for main to be between $50 and $60. In pubs you probably will get it for like about 40, but that would be kind of like your bottom plateau, right? So just the cost of eating out itself, right, inputted into your trip, because it's usually something you don't end up budgeting for or budgeting enough or researching at all. I will strongly suggest to research it more. And so we do have a lot of like price comparison on NZ Pocket Guide, which should help you kind of plan accordingly. But that's really one of the big kind of cost surprise. So I'm just picking back on this one. So like that, we've covered a lot of the complaining about cost. So we've established ourselves as cheap budget travelers, which we're not necessarily, but it's just kind of like that side of it, which I've kind of heard a lot about, things that people usually tend to voice more. We've heard a lot on that. Sorry, do you want to see what they're pitching in?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for what they're pitching in. So El van der Wal says, prices here have become much higher in the last 2 years. So when we look at prices for New Zealand, we are not that shocked about the NZ prices.
Okay, so there may be obviously some inflation at play right here, and also some exchange rate. Like the New Zealand dollars right now is pretty low, let's be honest. If you're coming from Europe, you'd get a lot of bangs for your bucks. So, start exchanging your money right now. We have some friends, Elizabeth. Here you go.
Okay.
That makes our life way easier. Elizabeth, we do have some friends right now which are in New Zealand and planning a trip to the UK. And they are looking at the amount of money they can bring to the UK shrink by the day because the New Zealand dollars is tanking. So if you're planning a trip to New Zealand now, any of you guys from Europe, go nuts and exchange your money now. Denise and Jeremy also say they went in 2018 and the price did not shock us either. Okay, well maybe that was just, again, it was 15 years ago, maybe just me.
Or 10 years ago for me. Talking about the food prices at restaurants, I do remember actually quite vividly when I first came to New Zealand that in the UK I would never go to McDonald's, or very rarely go to McDonald's or a fast food restaurant, because if I wanted to eat out, there was usually good deals at normal restaurants, or at least sort of like pub bar style restaurants, so it was never really a need. But then when I came to New Zealand, and although I did have the intention of cooking for myself for most meals, there was one time where I was sort of, you know, away. I had to basically buy food outside, basically, of making it myself. And when I was looking at prices, looking around, I remember it's actually been...
I'll have the side salad, sir.
Yeah, I actually remember being at the Dress Smart in Onehunga in Auckland, and just saw they have lots of food courts and stuff there, and I was looking at the prices and I was like, oh my god, I feel like I've been reduced to... all I could afford, really, was going to McDonald's, and I was like, oh god, my life is going to change a lot here, and my diet. Yeah, so I do remember that really vividly as well.
And it's interesting because Facebook groups, about traveling in New Zealand, which we frequent still quite often, are quite riddled with people complaining about the cost of eating out. So I'm not glad to hear that you guys are paying as much in Europe, but I'm glad to hear that the difference won't be too
as
big
shocking.
for you guys. Yes, exactly. All right, so moving on to your next thing you wish to do.
It also relates to shopping, but not about prices this time. It is more about the etiquette of going to a supermarket and knowing what to do with your shopping trolley when you go to the counter. And I still feel like I don't know what you're supposed to do.
Okay, you've been here 10 years. You should know by now.
I know, but it's different at every single store, and even within the same chain of store, like Pack and Save. I've been to a lot of Pack and Saves where you empty your trolley onto the conveyor.
So Pack and Save is a big supermarket chain. It's bright and yellow, and it's usually on the outskirts of the city, so they're usually the most convenient for travelers, because you don't necessarily have to go and maneuver around the city center to make your way there. Just to give you some context. Go.
Yeah, so at Pack and Save, what most of them I have seen doing is basically you unload your trolley onto the conveyor belt, then you go around and stand in front of your trolley. And sort of the cashier will use a trolley that's already prepared in front of you, that's empty.
I feel like we need an infographic.
And they will then they will fill up your shopping into a new empty trolley ahead of you, and the trolley that you emptied will go to the next customer. So that happens at most Pack and Saves I've sort of witnessed. But then only recently I went to another Pack and Save in Auckland, and that completely changed, and they were looking at me like I was the weirdo, like stood in front of my empty trolley, like it's always been like this here, hasn't it? But then I basically, they changed the rules on me, and now you use your trolley that you came in with, which is kind of like most shopping trolleys, and I mean most shops that I've experienced outside of New Zealand. And yeah, the rules just change on you all the time.
Somebody played an Uno reverse card on Laura for that shopping trolley, and she will never get over it. But no, I agree. It's a weird etiquette when you shop over there.
And then at the New Worlds, it can be different as well. They can use, the same trolley you came in with. There's this thing where if you've just got a shopping basket, a lot of people just put the entire shopping basket on top of the conveyor belt and they take it out from there, whereas I guess in the UK you would unload your basket and then there was a place to store empty baskets underneath the conveyor belt. I just feel like whatever system New Zealand is using for that, none of it makes sense. And
to you. It probably makes sense to them.
But no, it doesn't make sense to me, and it's not consistent either, and this is just a big confusion. And I know a lot of people do talk about that, like it's something that I've always said sort of about initially, like I've been blabbering it on about it since we started this guide like 10 years ago. Still confused by it now, and I know other people are as well. How about you?
Oh, I think it's a crazy nonsensical dance, but I usually kind of stand behind my trolley and then the lady grump at me and tell me what to do, and that's simpler that way. So I will suggest you do the same.
Just be passive and just sort of wait till you're told what to do.
Exactly.
Don't try to be proactive about the situation. Don't try to guess what's going to happen, because you won't be able to.
All right. So the next things which I knew, and obviously I know it now, and if you have watched any videos on this channel, if you have read anything on NZ Pocket Guide or ever heard about what we tell people first every time we meet them, you already know that. it's the weather variability. The weather changes so fast in New Zealand. I have been caught in my early days traveling in New Zealand on a hike or even on a day where I wanted to go do some activity and I'm like, oh, it's raining, I'll stay in a hostel for a little bit or I'll go, I'll get to work instead or blah, 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 right? I definitely should have gone out. The weather changes so bloody fast in New Zealand and the weather can be so highly unpredictable. So if you go on a hike and it's beautiful, sunny, make sure that you still have some nice layers, some rain jacket, etc. So make sure that you're prepared for the 4 seasons in one day, which is what we say all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think I did a lot of research into New Zealand before coming, so I did expect the crazy weather.
I think there is so much more content about New Zealand now than there was 15 years ago, so I think that this is true. It's hard for you to kind of miss that, but it has to be said.
Yeah.
I need people to know
I think people maybe underestimate when people say 4 seasons in one day, they underestimate what that means sometimes. So I guess, but yeah, just coming with like a whole bunch of gear for any situation is always a good idea anyway. I guess what's also the most surprising is sometimes when you get a full day which the weather doesn't change, or a full week.
That's what I mean, it's so unpredictable. Speaking of that, we're having great weather at Goat Island Marine Reservoir here. Laura can't stop looking through the kayak. She's not paddling much, is she?
I'm making the most of that, that clear
glass
kayak
bottle,
there.
Yeah. Mark says he's looking to cook for himself during his trip. If they can, but they're looking for the best solution to keep perishable goods while in between locations. I think the first time you head to a supermarket, buy one of those bag.
Like cooler bags.
Yeah, cooler bags, and buy a couple of ice packs. What I would suggest, if you want to be a cheeky bugger, you are grabbing a couple of the ice packs as you start your first grocery shopping. It sure takes a little while because you're going to be going around. So just literally ask a staff, where are the ice packs? Grab a couple of ice packs, put them in the freezer somewhere. Then go do your shopping, spend your 30-40 minutes doing the shopping. When you finish, grab those ice packs before you're about to head out, put them in your bag. They're already cold, you put your perishable in there, and off you go. There you go. That's what I personally
What an
do.
idea.
I know. I like logic. Your cashier over there at the supermarket won't like your logic.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
We've been pretty lucky with that in the past, in that we've gone to, say, a hostel, especially if you stay in a hostel, holiday park, or place where there are self-catering accommodation in either Auckland or Christchurch, where people begin or end their journey, and a lot of people have like cool bags and ice packs that they're going to leave behind for other people. So so we've been lucky to pick up some things basically from people leaving New Zealand, as you're arriving in New Zealand. So, I mean, you can't really rely on that, but it's just a little of an extra
That's
tip
one of the
there.
good things about self-catering accommodations.
Yes.
Denise and Geraldine said they experienced the fast-changing weather in April 2018, snow and 22 degrees after in the same day. Crazy but beautiful. Yep, that's typical New Zealand. And Dean Stevenson says, like the changeable weather on the British Isles, the weather swings a lot worse here though. Okay, interesting. Well, at least you guys come prepared. I like that a lot. Okay, so speaking of kind of weathers and everything, another thing that people don't research enough, in my opinion, are the driving times.
Ooh.
So the distance may look really short on the map, right? But the driving time can be much longer in New Zealand due to the winding roads, the rugged terrains, the potholes, or even more importantly, the fact that they're really beautiful drives. And so you may want to stop, because in New Zealand we have a lot of lookout stops and stopping areas on the side.
Rest stops.
Rest stops, that's the word, yeah. Where you may want to stop and actually take some photos or enjoy the place, right? And so I feel like when I did plan my first kind of road trip around New Zealand, right, I was like, okay, Google say it's a 2-hour drive, and we'll get to Google later, I'm pretty sure. Laura's going to complain about it.
Yes, I am.
So you look at Google and everything, and they're going to say, okay, it's a 2-hour drive. It genuinely will take you 3 hours. You will want to stop along the way and take some photos. You will find that you're not that confident driving at 100 kilometers an hour when the road is like kind of super windy and everything. If there is a big bright yellow sign that says, hey, we suggest you when you do the turn to be going at 25, I strongly suggest you go at 25 because that means it's a very sharp turn, and that happens really often in New Zealand. So yeah, the driving times are very often wrong, and so that's something that I did find a lot in like a lot of the travel blogs, and on our site as well. We kind of mention it a lot. But yeah, the driving times, be aware. That water is so beautiful, by the way. It's just so good. I'm getting very distracted by it. Laura, what's the next thing you wish you knew before you traveled New Zealand?
Yeah, well, mine is is very similar to that. So I wish that I knew about planning my route properly instead of relying on Google Maps. Google Maps is okay for the North Island in most places, but on the South Island especially, actually I have had a couple of, in more remote areas of the North Island I've had trouble, but South
As soon as
Island
you go remote, Google Map is...
South Island especially, just relying on Google Maps, like basically just putting in your destination, hitting like start on Google Maps and heading on the road is usually not a good idea, because the things that we've had trouble with in the past is that Google Maps will find the fastest route to your destination, but not necessarily the best roads or the safest roads to go on, or, you know, the conventional roads to go on. Sometimes it will find a random back road to your destination, which may end up...
She's still bitter about it years after, Laura.
Which may end up being, you know, a bit of a dirt road or a gravel road that's not kept in good condition. So yeah, usually there is like a more obvious route to take, which may, like, maybe in kilometers take a bit longer, but you can usually drive faster on those roads and you will get to your destination in, you know, relatively similar time. That is also safer and better to drive on. So it's a good idea, like, whether you prefer to use Google Maps or one of the other sort of map applications like Maps.me is one that we use as well.
Yeah.
Just sort of like looking at your route and just like, you know, just getting an idea of where it goes. If it seems to go somewhere like, I don't know, really out of the way, or
yeah,
really
the satellite
remote,
view is very handy.
Go on satellite view as well. See if it looks like it does go really, like, maybe on some weird dirt roads or something. Just have a look at that and review that before deciding that's the route you're going to take.
So an anonymous person just clicked like, and I don't want to say thank you to that person.
Thanks.
I clicked the like button. It's important for the algorithm on Google. So if you're bored while watching this video and want to do something else, click on that button. Moving on to my next thing I wish I knew before coming to New Zealand, and it's a very simple one, and I don't think Laura struggled with it as much, as English wasn't my first language when I came to New Zealand. But I wish I understood a bit more about the Kiwi slangs and accents. So yeah, any of the expats and travel blog and anything which is kind of like non-native kind of forums talking about Facebook groups or anything, they all kind of talk about it, like they all refer to the dairy and they have no idea what that is, or, you know, like nobody, you know, people call it genders, not flip-flops and those kind of things, right? And so yeah, just the Kiwi slang, the Kiwi kind of yeah, nah means nah. You know, it's kind of like that's the culture, right? Somebody says yeah, nah, don't think they meant yes or no.
Or even if they just say yeah, they might mean no.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little bit of that, right? So familiarizing yourself a little bit with Kiwi slangs would be really smart if English is not your first language. I remember struggling with that quite a fair amount.
Yeah.
But I know you can't relate on that, Laura.
No,
so yeah.
Really.
Denise and Geraldine are talking about the driving time. They say, is it possible to do East Coast in the North in the same day? Or is it better to plan 2 days?
So are you talking more
the Gisborne area?
like the Gisborne?
How much of it? It depends, right?
Yeah.
The entire East Coast, if you drive from Auckland, go the entire East Coast and try to head to Wellington, that would be insane to do one day. So yeah, give us some context about which, or just the East Coast region, or give us some context on that.
Like what, maybe like what two cities or towns are you trying to get between? But
that'd be handy to know.
Yeah.
All right, so Laura, what's your next one?
So actually I will jump onto something similar to that, which is about the use of words in New Zealand. And the big problem I had coming to New Zealand was the word capsicum, which means bell is another word for bell pepper. I'm probably explaining this to a lot of people that are like, duh, everyone knows what a capsicum is. But in the UK, where I originate, we call them peppers or bell peppers. So
one of the entire 10 things that I get you wish you knew was the word capsicum.
Because when I went to the self-checkout, I remember I think my first grocery shopping, mine are all grocery shopping related, it would seem, but my first grocery shopping happened at a supermarket right in the centre of Auckland. I think it's a New World in the centre of Auckland.
Okay, yeah.
And you wait in a big long queue to get to the self-checkout because it's like probably one of the busiest shops in the whole of New Zealand. And then when you get there to the self-checkout, and I am searching everywhere for bell beef or bell pepper, like where is it, like what is this thing? Like I'm searching everywhere to try and find, like, obviously I didn't think to go to C for capsicum. I don't know if I figured it out eventually. I wonder if I paid for something else. But yeah, basically I had trouble basically trying to find that on the self-checkout. So that's one word.
The word capsicum. I did not expect that to be on your list, but that's funny. All right, so moving on to the actual kind of travel kind of part of it. One thing I wish I knew before. So the first time I traveled New Zealand, I didn't just arrive and kind of stayed here for a while. I did a trip when I was living in Australia. And so I was kind of like, okay, I got a couple of weeks off of work. Let's head there. And so I decided to do that by like a week before I was coming. Man, I wish I knew the importance of booking ahead when traveling in New Zealand. My choices shrank completely on which car, which camper van company I could use, the places I could stay, the activities I could do. I mean, I had little to no options left, and I had to take like the last thing left everywhere, right? So making sure that accommodations are booked early, especially in the popular hotspot, the places that are not big. Like one of the misconceptions is kind of like, yeah, well, obviously it's really popular, like Lake Tekapo, right? So there's going to be a lot of accommodation there. Hell no, it's really limited. Something like everybody goes to Mount Cook, I'm going to be able to find a hotel easily there. Nope. So making sure that you kind of book things in advance is super important, especially in the peak season, which the peak season is like October, November, December, January, February-ish. That'd be about that. So yeah, do make sure that you book far in advance. Travel agencies will also recommend that. So again, as I said, I validated those kind of things, and even like the official tourism New Zealand, which is newzealand.com, also does recommend that. We do have a lot of those tips on nzpocketguide.com, and there is a link in the description below, so make sure that you check that out. And so yeah, I think it's important. Check it out.
Yeah. Maybe before I move on to my next one, we can talk about the Opotiki to Gisborne area.
They want to drive Opotiki to Gisborne, so
there's two options.
Yeah, we're going to consider that you want to go along the coast.
Yeah.
That's what would make sense, because otherwise they wouldn't ask us. Because yes, if you want to go straight from Opotiki to Gisborne without doing the coastal kind of experience and everything, absolutely, super easy. Now, if you want to do the coast drive, right? Honestly, if you start early in the day and just make it a whole day of a road trip, you absolutely can do it in a day. It'll be a long day, but you have a lot of fun. Pit stops along the way. We've done that with Laura, and we did enjoy it thoroughly. Now, if there's some places where you want to stay longer or do selected activities, then you may want to take longer.
Yeah, so we've also done this, I think, stopping actually even 3 days, but 2 days is probably good as well. So yeah, there are different places like Cook's Cove, we're near the Tolanga Bay Pier. There's like lots of different like longer hiking trails and stuff. By longer, I mean maybe like 2 hours, that sort of thing. So you could really like spend your time breaking up the journey a lot more.
Dean says, wait, at 1880 in 1 minute, I saw my lost keys go back in the water.
Yeah.
It's so transparent, but we need to, I agree, we need to switch the view. Here you go.
Yeah. So yeah, like Robin said, it's like splitting that. Either doing a really early morning start, doing the one day could definitely be worthwhile if you just want to say hop off to see some of the historic Maori churches or that sort of quick things that you can do along the way. We do have an itinerary actually on nzpocketguide.com that you can follow. We also have an itinerary for a much shorter trip. So if you were not to go through the coast, should I talk about Waiaweka Gorge route?
Yeah, it's a one kind of straight, it's a beautiful gorge kind of route, but I just don't think that's what they're after. So
Yeah,
I don't think
so
we
it's
should
not.
elaborate on
Yeah,
that.
so basically just to follow the coast road, which would be really good and really awesome. Either take absolutely the full day or split that into 2 days.
Here you go. And if you want our help actually like genuinely designing and planning your whole trip, feel free to join us on a Patreon. There's a link below. And yeah, we do that, and we even have a call where it's literally like a Google Meet where we all chat together after this video, which is always fun. And when I say all, we usually like 1, 2, 3 people. You know, it's kind of like people hop on and hop off from there. All right, so yeah, the importance of booking in advance is what I had. Laura, what's your next one?
Yeah, mine was actually going back to the roads and driving.
Oh yeah.
So my next sort of thing that shocked me was that actually driving in New Zealand isn't as scary as I thought it would be.
You drive on the left.
Well, which is kind of similar for people in the UK. So that first of all didn't scare me, but second of all, I guess what scared me normally about driving, especially it being from the UK and Europe, that area, is that there's so much traffic on the roads. Usually it can be quite intimidating when you have to deal with all the traffic going on, you know, as well as going where you're going and all that sort of thing. But in New Zealand, as soon as you leave, say, Auckland, or you get out of places like Wellington, I guess Christchurch is also somewhat busy, but not crazy busy.
Yeah.
Once you leave those areas, you feel like you are one car out of, sometimes you will only see like 3 other cars on the journey. Like, you will have a lot of road space to yourself most of the time. You are not like usually pestered too much by traffic, although there will be. New Zealanders are notorious for driving quite fast, and they usually will just be up your ass and then overtake you
up
at
your
some
bleep.
point. Up your bum, up your car's bum. And then
I'm really glad that you're saying that, though, because if you see, I just underline it for you. I actually forgot to say during the driving time. It says also driving on the left is not that hard. I was actually quite surprised coming from a country that drives on the right. You know, obviously everybody's always scared about it, and I've seen that in so many forums. Like, I mean, we get this question here so often, right? It's actually surprisingly easy. Just, you know, stop at the first kind of roundabouts, watch the traffic go for a little bit, like give yourself 30 seconds, ignore the people honking at the back, and then go. And that really does help. That's a tip I give to everybody.
Yeah.
We also have a deal in the live chat that says in South Africa they also call and you use the emoji for it, which I like. Capsicums, bell peppers, or just peppers. So capsicum is a new name for me as well. So here you go.
It's
You're
good
not
to
alone.
hear I'm not alone.
The crazy. I mean, I cannot believe that the thing that's going to be the most remembered out of all that I wish I knew is going to be the word capsicum. This is going to drive me nuts.
Yep.
All right. But yeah, usually I would say if you knew the word capsicum beforehand, hit like, some stuff like that, but I can't be fussed with that. Moving on to my next thing that I wish I knew, and that was about the culture. So as I mentioned, my first trip to New Zealand came out of Australia. That was just a quick trip, and that was kind of fine. But my second trip to New Zealand, I was coming out of Canada. Which is very North American style with a lot of tipping culture and all that, right? So I wish I knew more about the tipping culture in New Zealand and the fact that kind of tips are not too much of a thing here, because I had a couple of kind of awkward moments when I left some money on the table and then a waiter kind of like followed me and said, you forgot this, or you forgot your change, all those kind of things, and it's just a little awkward about it. So yeah, awkward situations do happen, and then I kind of looked into it, and there is actually, I found 2 travel blogs which also were talking about that, and were kind of surprised about it. So it's not just us, it's not just NZ Pocket Guide, more people have been surprised by it. So just note that tipping, if you're coming from North America, is not too much of a thing in the country. Laura? What do you have?
My next one is so random that I keep forgetting it's on my list and I keep looking at it.
Oh, so more random than the word capsicum? What is going on today?
But this actually wasn't brought to my attention until I had a friend that I knew in the UK visit recently, and then she kind of pointed it out, and I was like, yeah, actually, I guess I do see that being a thing that's kind of weird in New Zealand.
Oh, so not all the rivers are brown.
No, not that. Is that you have to brush your teeth harder in New Zealand.
You have to brush your teeth harder. What do you mean by that?
So, because there's not, I guess, a lot of chemicals and fluoride.
Yeah,
and
we
all
don't use
that
fluoride in the water.
in the water supply. You kind of notice that if you if you're a bit of a lazy teeth brusher, like I guess like maybe you get used to when you're in countries where they do have fluoride and stuff in the water, that you soon realize that your teeth kind of feel like there's like, I guess,
a bit grimy, basically.
A bit grimy, yeah. A bit of like, I guess, tar building up, a bit scratchy, which all you need to do is basically brush your teeth for longer and better, and it gets rid of it. But yeah, I guess since being in New Zealand, I found myself having, like, my teeth brushing routine has been much more vigorous. I'm going through a lot more toothbrushes than I was outside of the country, where I felt like, well, the water's doing most of the work for me.
Wow, I'd never noticed, or
yeah.
Maybe I'm just a dirty Frenchman, or I'm a vigorous teeth brusher. Who knows?
Yeah, so it's just, you know, if you're in New Zealand for a while, if you're here for a working holiday or something, maybe you'll find yourself brushing your teeth harder to make them feel clean.
Interesting. So as Laura's taking us through a everyday day in Laura's life, you know, brushing your teeth and then going to buy capsicums by the dozens, I'm going to continue talking about actually traveling in New Zealand. And one of the things I wish I knew more, and I did get a fine for that, and it's still like one of the shameful days of my life, and that was the rules about freedom camping. So my first trip traveling to New Zealand, really a long time ago, coming from Australia, I was in a camper van because you know, there was very little left available in the country. As I mentioned, I didn't plan early enough and everything. And yeah, New Zealand has very strict rules for freedom camping. You can find them on the Department of Conservation website. You can find links to each of the different regions and everything on nzpocketguide.com. We have the links to all the different bylaws from all the different councils. The rules for freedom camping are damn strict. Make sure that you respect them or you will be fined, because you cannot just drive around, park your car wherever you want, sleep in your car and continue driving. This doesn't work in New Zealand. You need to have a self-contained camper van and you need to understand the freedom camping rules in the country. Also, if you park in places which are very touristic and you decide to stay in an accommodation because, well, freedom camping is really hard. I'm looking at you, Queenstown. Make sure that you leave all the curtains of your camper van or your RV open, so the warden, when walking around, does not think that you're sleeping in your camper van, because that also happened to us once. But I don't consider that as a fine because we successfully got it cancelled. We had the camper van in Queenstown. We parked it somewhere where we were told to park the camper van. We stayed in a hotel. We opened the curtains, and we did not open the curtains, sorry, and the damn warden gave us a fine thinking we were sleeping in it. But yeah, we got it cancelled. That doesn't count, but I got a fine for actually badly freedom camping. So freedom camping rules are complex. You probably know that is something you need to look into if you are renting a camper van. Every camper van rental companies will give you some information. They are partial, and this is not enough information for you to, oh, thank you to the next person that clicked like. I appreciate you, person that clicked the like button. You're nice. Yeah, so you probably know that you have to research it. You probably, if you have hanged out in any of the Facebook groups or forums or anything like that, you've heard about it. Make sure you do your research. We have a lot of content on the website for that. Don't be a Robin. That's it. That's my freedom camping kind of rant, because damn, I really wish I knew. Also, I wish it was simpler. Can then just standardize that around the country and make it easy? Damn, I really wish. I think this is where, like, giving the power to the regional council on that is just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So that's my take
because
on that.
That is a nightmare, we do have an article on nzpocketguide.com which is titled Freedom Camping Region by Region, where I give links for every single region in New Zealand.
And that's so many links. Like, just looking at that article
basically,
annoys me.
if you look at, you know, okay, I'm going to the areas of, say, Rotorua, I'm going, you know, around sort of the Rotorua Lakes area, that sort of thing. I'll have a link to their Freedom Camping rules page, so you know what you can do in the Rotorua area, for example. I know it's kind of messy, but if you do really want to sort of plan your trip ahead, know where you're going to be staying the night and where you can be staying for free, then I do have all those links available.
And that relates as well to the planning in advance, because there are a lot of them which have small amount of spots, and so you need to plan in advance because you need to be there relatively early because it's first in, first served, those kind of things.
Yes, exactly.
Laura, do you want to welcome Dennis and Geraldine into our Patreon group? They just joined us on
awesome.
Patreon. Whoop, whoop.
Great to have you guys.
Yeah, I can't wait to be chatting with you guys in about 20 minutes. We'll have our first call. You're more than welcome to jump on and come and have fun. All right, so that was my freedom camping stuff. Do you have another one? We have 15 minutes to do 4 more.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, my next one would be to spend less time in Auckland.
Yeah, that's true.
Whether you are, even if you're just traveling through the country and maybe you decided to spend, say, 2 days in Auckland, you can probably reduce that to 1 if you're staying for a year on a working holiday. I spent about, I think, 10 days in Auckland. I definitely, because I wanted to set up my sort of bank account, all that sort of thing beforehand. 10 days was way too much. I could have reduced that to even just a week was fine for that. So whatever time you planned to spend in Auckland, you can probably reduce that. Auckland's not a really fair representation of what New Zealand is. If you're here on limited time, you probably don't want to spend way too much time in Auckland, if any time in Auckland. If you're here for a very long time, it's definitely worth visiting, but you don't need to spend heaps of time there.
Armand is saying, number 1 things you miss, you will miss the food from back home. That I did not wish I knew. I knew it before coming to New Zealand, because as part of the Commonwealth and being very much English influenced, I knew the food would be trustworthy more than anything else. So yeah. What?
Trustworthy.
Well, I think English food should be served out of a trough, not on a plate. Like, there's no point having a table to eat bangers and mash.
True.
Here you go. And garbage water is what they call tea.
Now, you can't say anything bad about tea. It's one of the most drunk drinks in the world.
Yeah, that brown thing shouldn't be anything that people drink. And Dennis and John, you say thanks a lot. No, thanks to you. It's very rare for people to appreciate online content and to actually reward and understand the hard work behind it. So you're truly special for choosing to support us, even just for 1 month. So seriously, thanks to you guys. All right, my next thing I wish I knew before coming to New Zealand, and as simple as that, I just didn't buy it, and I wish I bought it before coming to New Zealand, because when you realize you need it, that's too late for you to go and buy it, and that's insect repellent. There are some places which are riddled with sandflies around, for example, Abel Tasman, which is a really good place to visit. Around the west coast, like Hokitika Gorge, which is definitely worth checking out. So all those places are fantastic, really worth checking out, but you want to spray yourself with insect repellent, or at least have it in your bag ready for when you realize, oh my lord, there is a lot of sandflies around. So I wish I knew that that was needed, because sandflies can definitely be relentless. I've also seen people complaining a lot about it on TripAdvisor for any places in like Hokitika Gorge or Abel Tasman.
Yeah.
This is like the thing that, in the word clouds of stuff, that's what they complain a lot about. So yeah, I wasn't alone on that, but that's definitely something I wish I knew, because I would have bought it early on. And if you buy one, don't buy one which is full of DEET. There is some really good ones like natural
lemon eucalyptus.
We have actually have a full article, because we travel a lot into the South Pacific Islands, which also have a lot of mosquitoes and mosquito diseases, so we kind of try to avoid that. So we're kind of connoisseur when it comes down to our insect repellent. And what we do every time we travel, we get a bunch of different insect repellents, so we can try a lot of different brands. We came back from Fiji recently, and we had 6 different brands, if I'm correct. Like, we had 6 different.
We had I think it's 4, but But it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, so
numbers,
we had
but
6
yeah.
ones, but 2 of them we had we had the roll-on and the spray,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so we had 6 different options, but 4 different brands. Sorry about that. And yeah, so we try them, and we can kind of tell you which one's good, which one's not good, etc. So we do have articles on all our site that recommend them. So yeah, make sure to check that out. Make sure to get yourself insect repellent before you visit New Zealand. All right, go.
My next one is definitely concerning for working, not concerning for, but concerning working holiday makers, and that is signing up to Woof.
Woof.
I kind of wish that I didn't, because personally for me, I didn't end up using it. Although it did give me a lot of options for, you know, for different types of jobs. So what woofing is basically a way, a lot of hosts who need help on their, particularly their farms or sort of, you know, lifestyle gardens and farms and that sort of thing. They need workers to basically, they'll house them and feed them for free in exchange for what's supposed to be about 3 to 4 hours work a day, and then basically you get free food and accommodation. It's kind of like, that's why it's quite nice for traveling and for working holiday makers. But for me, I was doing, I guess, you know, some work at, you know, in Queenstown, like some backpacker jobs, that sort of thing. So it turned out that job finding using sort of the free methods and ways to do that just worked for me personally more than woofing did, although woofing is very much a good thing for other people.
And since you came to New Zealand, the regulation also has changed on woof, and you know, people have to pay some pay taxes, etc. So woofing is a bit less of a thing. So
It's
yeah,
less of a thing now. It was kind of in that transition phase, and you have to pay a fee to become a Woof member, and it's just something I didn't end up using. So I kind of wish that I didn't do it.
The video is back looking for Dean's keys. We will find them, mate. So we have Armand that says, oh, the weather is really unpredictable. Yes, mate, that was my number 2 on the list. Don't you worry, I covered that for sure. I will not let it go. And Dean is saying, my South African friend found the food situation difficult. Trying a whole lot of other stuff, find things that taste the same from home every day. Here, try this. No, these are not frankfurters, etc. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, when you travel anyway, you shouldn't be seeking the same food that you have back home, or at least that's kind of my ethos, you know, when I travel around. Just because you're never gonna find like the same, like I'm never gonna find a nice crunchy baguette with a soft middle and warm and just kind of give you a hug.
I'm never gonna find a proper can of Heinz baked beans. Oh wait, yes I will.
Wow. All right, moving on. So my next things are... Let's just let this... I'm letting this one fly, guys. Cool. So my next things I wish I knew, and my last one on the list was, and that's not necessarily a... Yeah, that's kind of I think it's probably one of the biggest drawback to traveling in New Zealand, in my opinion, and that's the limitation of public transportation.
Yes.
You can't really kind of take a train all around like you could be doing in Europe, for example. The bus network, well, now in New Zealand there's only one brand, which is called Intercity, so making your way around, you kind of have 1-2 departures a day. That's pretty much what you have. When it comes down to public transportation within a city itself, it is a bit more complex to navigate them. It's not that clear cut. The map are not like kind of beautiful, like New York subway map where you understand everything right from the get-go. And if you are heading to rural areas, or if you want to go do a hike here or hike there because you want to get outside, you have no public transport options that will take you to all those places, like to the start of the hike and all those kind of things. So it's quite hard. You will have to take private shuttles or all those kind of things. So this is something that comes up really often on this channel, like you know, on the YouTube comments, the YouTube questions, those kind of things. People ask that really often, and it's something that I also have found. And somebody's droning. We may need to help. Yeah, there's somebody here. That's not a fish.
Do not touch it. Do not touch it, Robin. It's a marine reserve. It's a no-touch zone.
Maybe it's Dean looking for his keys right here. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. Like public transportation as a whole is a bit tough, and you know, it makes it kind of mandatory if you really want to explore New Zealand to have your own transportation. Albeit not the most ideal thing, but that's something I wish I knew before, because most of the time I always kind of think, oh, I drive from point A to point B, and then in there I'll park the car and I don't have to drive around the city. I can kind of just take the bus around, or I don't have to drive myself here and there. I can just plunk the car, stay somewhere 3 days, and kind of take public transport and everything. Not happening.
My next point weirdly relates...
Your last point, right?
My last point,
okay, cool. Nice.
Weirdly relates to that, in that New Zealand, but it's more on an international scale, And this is obviously very relevant for anyone wanting to stay long term in New Zealand, wanting to live in New Zealand. So maybe a bit less for travellers, but kind of for travellers because it means that you probably want to stay here longer to make the most of it. But New Zealand is so far away from...
That flight from Europe or North America takes a physical toll on you. Like, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's a rough flight.
So, yeah, flying anywhere outside of the South Pacific, so anywhere outside of Australia, say, or, you know, the South Pacific Islands, is long, it is expensive as hell, and obviously it is very, very polluting. Those long-term flights, if you are going, you know, you're living in New Zealand, you're going back home to see mom and pop, back in Europe or back in the US or whatever, that is a very big toll on your financial situation as well as the planet just to go do that. So obviously that was not sort of my personal...
It's so pleasing. We have 7 viewers and 7 likes. That's so good. I love it.
So that wasn't my sort of like, I didn't really care about that when I first came to New Zealand, but maybe had I realised how much I cared about the planet once I'd been to New Zealand, but then again, it was kind of the nature of New Zealand that made me care. But, you know, maybe I would have thought twice before deciding to live in New Zealand, you know, if I'd cared about that prior to coming. Not saying that I regret anything, but it's kind of like, it is definitely worth considering.
But on the silver lining, right, a short haul flight really takes you to absolutely amazing places. We have all the South Pacific Islands to visit, and if that's the kind of thing that you're really into, man, that you're going to be in for a treat. Man, the South Pacific is phenomenal, and that's why we run travel guides for the South Pacific as well. So exploring your own backyard rather than flying back to Europe. I mean, for one flight to Europe, you can literally take 3 holidays in the Pacific, right? It's that much, right? And all those islands have a, you know, culture of their own, have a feel of their own. It's phenomenal. So you still have some great places to visit. You're just going back there.
Yeah, amazing things to see around New Zealand. But yeah, it's always worth knowing, like, you know, how far New Zealand is, what it means to come here and stuff like that. It's well worth sort of keeping in mind.
So Dean says the West Coast sandfly bites are terrible, but they love foreign food. Yeah, no, I do agree. I tend to get bitten way more than Laura.
But I still get bitten.
Yeah, you do get bitten, but I tend to be like riddled with bites usually. All right, so that wraps up all the things that we wished we knew. Not all the things, but like a good amount of things that we wish we knew.
Randomly came to our heads.
Don't remember, a bell pepper in New Zealand is a capsicum. So yeah. And
brush your teeth harder.
And brush your teeth harder. Laura's list, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on the live chat or in the comment section. There is also a link in the description of this video that will point you to nzpocketguide.com, which is New Zealand's largest travel guide. So that should be helpful to you all as well. And yeah, we'll see you next week for another one of those live shows. If you have any questions about traveling in New Zealand, we are here to help you 1 hour a week at this time. And anyone which is on Patreon, by the way, we do have a group call right now to help you plan your trip and just hang out and everything. So yeah, it's happening in the next 5 to 10 minutes. There is a link for you in the private Patreon Facebook group. And if you don't have access to that just yet because you just joined Denise and Geraldine, the link is in Patreon itself. So click on the link, I'll accept you, you'll be in. That'd be fun. In the meantime, see you all next week. Bye bye. Oh, like, subscribe, do those things. The algorithm wants you to do that.
See you next week. Enjoy the fish.
Enjoy the fish. We'll find Dean's keys.
There's a plank.